call to order the meeting of the White House Council for this evening, Tuesday, January the 12th, 2021. It is 6:04 p.m. Ms. Hardy, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. James Wansley.
Here.
Ginger Cardwell.
Here.
Paul Hickey.
Here.
Dick Jackson.
Here.
Michael Lowe.
Here.
And that's it. We have four.
All right, thank you. Can you guys turn on your microphones real quick?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay, that part's working. Gotcha. All right, will you please stand if you're able and join me in a word of prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, we gather here today as members of a community that we hold dear. We ask for your wisdom as we reflect on history of our city, for patience and insight as we consider the matters at hand, and for courage and stewardship as we plan for the future of the city of White House. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, starting with the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, I think we're almost ready to take that show on the road. All right, that brings us down to item D on the agenda, presentations. Starting with item 1.
Mayor and council, we will have to reschedule our new firefighters introduction, Adam Huber, and he and Chief Johnson were unable to make it tonight, so we will get that rescheduled soon.
Understood. Are there any additional presentations to be made at this time? That's it? Okay. Moving on to item E, community interest. This section of the agenda shall allow any member of the city council, the mayor, or the city manager the opportunity to discuss minor non-actionable items such as recognition, scheduling, and upcoming civic events that are not listed on the agenda, which require no action by the council. Are there any community interest items to discuss or share?
Mayor and council, I'll add 2 city offices will be closed on Monday, January 18th in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And Net Health also, as most of you are aware, held a vaccination clinic at Harvey Hall last week. They do have an ongoing wait list. So if anyone is interested, we'll be posting some of that information on how you can get on their list for vaccine distribution if interested.
All right, anything else? I would like to recognize the many citizens of White House for exhibiting an unexpected level of raw talent for building snowmen. Not a skill that they get to practice on very often, but there's still some standing right now and drive around town.
That's
so
true.
Thanks for bringing the spirit. All right, we're moving on to public forum. Has anyone signed up to speak for the public forum?
Yes, sir.
We have no one here, so I'll not bother going through the details of that agenda item. We'll move on to item G, the consent agenda. So you have your consent agenda items before you. And if no one would like to move one or more of the items onto the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. There'll be any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. On to item H, other action items, ordinances, resolutions, public hearings. Starting with number 1, swear in council place 1. Ms. Hargis, take it away, please.
Mr. Bristol. Raise your right hand. Place the left hand on the Bible. Okay. I state your name.
I, Zach Briscoe,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of City Council Place 1
of the office of City Council Place 1
of the City of White House
of the City of White House
in the state of Texas,
in the state of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States,
of the United States,
of this state, and the charter and ordinances of the city,
and the charter and ordinances of the city,
So help me God.
So let me go.
All right, congratulations.
All right.
sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Vargas, and welcome to the City of Lighthouse, Councilman Briscoe.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Thank you
stepping
all
up.
for having me. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yes, sir. Thanks for stepping up to serve your community. We appreciate it. All right, item number 2, discuss, consider, and act on appointments for planning and zoning commission. So council, you'll find a staff report document on this item as an attachment to your agenda. For Cassie Hollington. Make sure the first time I say it in public, I get it right. Did I get it right?
I haven't spoken.
It was emailed earlier today. We have a handout as well. If you didn't get the email, she attached her application along with a CV for your consideration. So we can take a few moments and review this item. And when you're comfortable, if there's no further questions or comments on this item, then I'll entertain a motion for approval.
She indicated it wouldn't be a problem with the meetings with her schedule as far as attending them.
Yes. And Mayor and Council, I'll add, so you have 2 vacancies right now on Planning and Zoning Commission. One is an unexpired term that ends November 2022, and one is an unexpired term ending in November 2021. I did speak with another individual today who is interested in serving on this board. She just hasn't had a chance to get her application back yet. So as soon as we get that, we'll have that to the agenda for consideration.
Based on what I saw on the application, she's got a really diverse background in different areas that I think could be real effective on P and Z.
I agree with that. If there's no other discussion, I move to appoint Cassie Hollinshead to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission for a 2-year unexpired term that ends November 2022.
Motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Briscoe. Motion and a second. Will there be any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Welcome to Planning and Zoning, Mrs. Hollinshead. All right, item number 3, discuss, consider, and act upon the bids received from stormwater project located within Royal Park subdivision. Council, once again, you have a staff report attached to the agenda. The report contains the background of the project and a recommendation from staff. Anything you'd like to add, Mrs. Slatton?
Mayor and Council, I'll just state for the record, so the council approved us to go out for bid on this project on July 28th. The bids received were about $27,000 over the initial estimate of the project. And in part due to several factors, the size of the project being so small, the time of year, and the workload that our construction companies are currently seeing, they're not hurting for these types of jobs, and to mobilize for such a small job would be cost prohibitive for most of them. So staff is recommending that we reject this bid and see if we can combine it with some other drainage projects and perhaps over the summer and send it all out to bid and hopefully increase our competitiveness. I did speak with the homeowner that kind of initiated this project and let her know where we stood. And she was supportive of that and just asked that when we do go out to bid that we let them know. So.
All right, will there be any further questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to reject the bid received for the Royal Park subdivision stormwater project.
I have a motion. Can I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Councilman Jackson. All right, a motion and a second. Will there be any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. On to item 4. Discuss, consider, and act upon ordinance 21-0112-01, amending an ordinance regarding mobile food units regulations. Again, council, you'll find a staff report document as an attachment to the agenda. It contains a background of the project and a recommendation from staff. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this one, Mrs. Black?
Mayor and council, I will just add that, as you'll recall, several months ago, we amended our ordinances to allow for food truck parks as a temporary use. At that time, staff was not aware that the interested party was going to place this in a residential area. And the reason why he wants to place it in an area that's currently zoned residential is because the commercial area of his development does not yet have utilities. And so he is asking to put this on the residential side, just off of Hagen, as a temporary use. And when we amended that ordinance, a temporary use is good for 6 months, extendable up to a year. So staff is recommending approval.
I had a question on that. So I see how we added the residential high density, medium density, residential low, and planned development for a temporary use. Is there wording that we could put in that? So that way somebody doesn't have to come. Well, let me ask the first two-part question. First question. Are they required to have the drawings that we have that are showing the temporary lot? Is that because of how our ordinance reads with restrooms, water, and so forth? Okay. So the reason I asked that was I thought part of the issue that we brought up the last time was we were okay with neighborhoods that are being developed under development, and we might have to restructure what development being, because if one house gets a permit to add a shed, that could be technically development. But with that being said, we were trying to allow food trucks to enter those areas where they're not impeding progress, or at least, movement in the neighborhood, but where they could set up to sell to the workers, the construction workers.
So we
or so
did
forth.
amend the ordinance to allow that. So we have two separate tiers of regulations. So we have an individual food truck and a food truck park. This would
Okay.
only apply to food truck parks where we have multiple food trucks operating kind of day after day on a routine basis. We do allow individual food trucks to operate in the neighborhood without getting a temporary use permit. They just have to get a normal food truck permit and provide us the required information for that. So it wouldn't require site plan, restroom construction, any of those types of things for an
Okay.
individual food truck.
So the definition of a park, food truck park, is what differentiates?
I don't have.
Is it just a certain number of food trucks in the same location, or is it just the permanent aspect of it, or semi-permanent, or?
More of the semi-permanent aspect of it. It's
It's a zoning designation, right, of that area?
it's a use, not,
I
yeah,
see.
it's a use. Since I don't have stuff.
While she looks that up, it may be my confusion was because of the way A reads. To me, it was saying all mobile food units and or mobile food parks are required to have this temporary use permit. Because if I have a mobile one time, if I'm just going into a neighborhood and I've got a mobile food truck, am I reading that correctly, or am I reading too much into that? Where it mentions the individual vehicles also.
So there's a separate section that wasn't included as a part of your packet because it's not being changed. So section D of that ordinance states that mobile food units shall only operate with curbside service on a city street under the following conditions. And so it lists separate conditions for single mobile food units to operate. But let me go back and find the definition.
So maybe the intention of this letter A that you're speaking of, Paul, is mentioning food units within the mobile food park. Maybe that's the the thought behind that. Does that make
Multiple.
sense?
Multiple units in one area.
Right, multiple food units within the food park. I'm just taking a stab at it.
I do see what you're saying. So we could add, let's see.
It just, when it says any and all mobile food units and or,
Right.
to me, that's the one individual versus numerous at the time.
Okay, let me back up to your definition of mobile food unit versus mobile food park. So a mobile food park shall mean locations designated for the operation of 2 or more mobile food units.
And this zoning and location is for all individual mobile food units and mobile food parks. They have to be, we had to set up zoning zoning areas designated for that.
So we may need to add residential for single food, for mobile food units. When we made that ordinance change to allow them,
Well, I apologize. So the intent of this is for the mobile food park, correct? That they set that up, they have a temporary use permit. I think the only concern that I've got, and I apologize for just voicing this, would be if I rate it as a mobile food vendor, I'm thinking I've got to get a use permit and then a temporary permit to go into that because of, but I see where the intent was mobile food units within the mobile food park. Do we need to maybe change that language to where that would allow a separation
yes,
from individual versus mobile park?
yes.
So do we just need to make a motion and change the language in line A to read mobile food units within mobile food parks? Would that, does that solve
My
it?
recommendation is that we're probably gonna need 2 separate sections for zoning and location. I think we need an A that applies to the zoning and location for mobile food units. And then a section B that applies to mobile food parks and lists those appropriate zoning and locations.
I would agree with that.
So we can bring this back next meeting for
We
consideration.
can, my only concern is I'm not sure on Mr. Hall's timing on how quickly he's wanting to move forward with this. So if you'd like, Mayor and Council, I can give you a recommendation now. And if y'all want to make a motion to approve, we can do that. I think I understand the intent. I don't think there's any concern.
Okay.
I haven't heard any concern with what we're trying to accomplish. So I think if you're comfortable with that, I can give you some wording and then you can just make a motion as stated. That work?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Staff's recommendation would be to make section A under, or let's do this, would make paragraph A under section 3 zoning and location apply to mobile food units. Mobile food units shall operate within the following zoning districts for the city of White House: retail office high intensity, retail office medium intensity, retail office low intensity, light industrial, residential high density, residential medium density, residential low density, and planned development. Under paragraph B, under section 3 zoning and location, mobile food parks shall operate within the following zoning districts for the city of White House: retail office high intensity, retail office medium density, retail office low intensity, light industrial business park, retail residential high density only while subdivision is actively under construction with a temporary use permit, residential medium density only while subdivision is actively under construction with temporary use permit, residential low density only while subdivision is actively under construction with a temporary use permit, planned development only while subdivision is actively under construction with a temporary use permit. The only thing on planned development is sometimes your planned development stays planned development even after it's under construction. So as long as it's identified in the plan development as an allowed use, we would continue to allow that on a permanent basis, not necessarily just require a temporary use permit.
I think that clarifies it.
Okay.
All right, we have a staff recommendation on this item. I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make the motion to approve as it was recommended for the section 3A and section 3A or B as stated.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. There'll be any further discussion?
Can I say, Susan, I appreciate you working on this because this has been
Sir, I apologize.
so many times, but I apologize, but I
I should've
appreciate
put
the hard work.
Yes, sir. I should have put the whole ordinance in instead of just our changes. That would have made it maybe more clear. I apologize for that.
This ordinance is the definition of a living document.
It is, and there's some entrepreneurship happening here too, so
Yeah.
I'm all about it. I'm glad you guys are offering them the flexibility they need to move forward. So if there's no more discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we move on to item number 5, discuss, consider, and act upon attending East Texas Coalition Day. Again, council, you'll find a staff report document as an attachment to the agenda. The report contains the background, financial impact of attending the event, and the budget item that best qualifies for funding. I have some information to share. I came in contact with the Tyler Chamber Representative Henry Bell today, the person that coordinates all of this on a regular basis. In fact, he organizes it so much that he is registered as a lobbyist. That's what it winds up turning into when you organize that many people to go down to Austin. So to provide some context here, this is the biannual state legislative session that started January the 12th of this year. It'll last up to 140 days. So as it'll go as far as June the 1st, 2021. And what this coalition does is it organizes a conference in Austin. So they get around 200 people from this area, including Longview and Mineola. It's kind of East Texas comes together. And they reserve some hotel rooms down in Austin. They reserve a banquet center that's kind of different each time in Austin. They get the best deal they can. And this coalition and this conference provides an opportunity to meet with state representatives, our state representative and our senator and other representatives in Austin in person to discuss our local issues and opportunities. So anything we're facing, anything that we think is coming our way that state law is in the way of, that they could help us capitalize on, that's what it is. So it's also an opportunity for some of the city staff or the elected officials to engage with their peers and exchange ideas. It's just kind of gathering of people that are like-minded with the same problems, regardless of whether they're in a big city or a small city. So this is what I learned by reaching out to Henry Bell. So for comparison, city our size, Bullard maybe, Bullard will be sending their mayor and their city manager. That's who they sponsor to go. It's my understanding that cities like Longview and Tyler, they'll have a much larger presence there. They'll have many of their elected officials. They'll have more of their staff. Tyler actually has somebody that serves as an appointed delegate to gather all of the items from the different cities. So the larger cities in our area, like Tyler and Longview, they work together to create a list to present to our state officials. The focus of the coalition's influence during the conference will actually be that list. So that list is something that was emailed out kind of late today. You have a printed copy of it in front of you to explore. And that's what they're going to be kind of working now. The format of the conference is currently unknown and can change from a virtual conference. It might transition over to a virtual conference. It might be an in-person conference limited to a visit with state officials at the designated hotel in Austin. State officials might not be able to attend, but virtually that might happen. So you may wind up going from East Texas with a bunch of people to East Texas to sit in a hotel room in Austin and video conference with somebody that's there in Austin. The Capitol tour that's a part of this is in danger of being denied. So all of this said, the chamber hopes to have more definitive answers on some of these questions in 2 weeks. So are there any questions about what I've mentioned so far? All right. So knowing what I know, the list in hand, all of this stuff, my recommendation to council is to fund the trip for Mrs. Black using funds from the remaining legislative budget item, the one that was identified in the recommendation. And at her discretion, based on the ultimate format of the conference and any other factors, she can decide if she wishes to attend the conference. And if there are any elected officials that wish to attend, they would pay for their own registration, their own lodging and travel costs and meals and incidentals. And if there are any elected officials that would like to send topics or issues or opportunities for discussion, these topics would be sent along with whoever from here attends. And the same goes for any items to be autographed by our elected state officials. So all that being said, that's a lot of information. Open it up for discussion.
I think it's a wise idea because there's a little bit of a hindrance of communication between the local and state officials just because of distance and other barriers, especially during a pandemic. So sending some representatives down there would be wise because of, we sent prior city manager to legislation to talk about how the tax reform bill would hurt our cities. And there was some benefit to that, and he was able to express those views. So I think the main thing is what's on this list, and then maybe have a couple of our own points that we would like. It might be as far as some things that benefit White House that we might need to discuss at the next meeting, but so forth entailing of maybe the Lake Columbia project that we're tied into, and so forth. And so I think it'd be beneficial to have that face-to-face, even if it is a virtual, to where those questions and views that we have that can benefit our citizens can be represented.
I agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree too.
Yeah, there's some really exciting legislation that's coming down, that's been proposed already. One of the ones is unfunded mandates, where the state can't require the city to do anything, additional training, anything that required the city to pay for without matching funds from the state. So that's the kind of things that we would hope, yay, let's cheer those things along, that help us govern based off of our small town as opposed to just the state in general. So those are the few things. So the recommendation, what still stands, I guess, is council approval of funding the trip for Mrs. Black, or giving her permission to go on the trip if she sees fit to do so, with how the trip winds up being, if it's going to be worth her time.
I'm gonna go on my own nickel. Pay it out of my own pocket.
Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. I mean, that's not,
Well,
so.
I think it'll be it'll be a great experience. And again, anytime you can get in front of the legislators and stuff, it can only help our city, so.
Leslie, are there any other, or Mayor Wansley, are there any other events or trainings or whatnot, or TML that we anticipate wanting to attend? I see here that there's 3,200 remaining in the legislative budget of this fiscal year. So are there any other trainings that you're aware of that are important to attend?
So for my professional development, we have a separate line item for that that I would take my training out of, but I am doing a TML legislative webinar series over the next several months through the legislative session to keep up to date with what legislation is coming out of the Capitol. And the only other thing I can think of is usually the TML conference is a great conference if you have an opportunity to attend and they have an opportunity to hold it. We won't know, of course, until later in the year. That's usually either in September or October. So I think if you choose to go to it at that time, we'll be able to identify some other funding opportunities. I don't see that preventing anyone from attending that, should we be able to actually have that this year. So.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask is because I think it would be beneficial with having a new mayor also to send James Wansley, Mayor Wansley, to attend as well. So I feel like if we have the funds, I think it would be beneficial for us at this time as well, with all the growth and
I agree.
new things on the horizon. So unless there's any other discussion, I'll make a motion.
It's already a line item, correct?
Right, it's already a line item. It's just, I'm so new, wasn't sure how y'all handled professional development or training or these types of events for the council, so I just wanted to bring it before you to talk about it and see what your preference was. So, but yeah, it's already budgeted. I think we have the funds, both in the legislative item and then under my professional development budget line item as well.
So just to be clear, your attendance would come out of this line item, this 3248.
I can look and see where it would
Okay.
best fit. Either one, it
Okay.
doesn't really matter.
I hate to make a motion or approve a certain amount, especially because those can fluctuate.
Right.
It could be under a few dollars over, I mean, so. But I do agree with you.
I'd like
In that
to, I appreciate the sentiment. I would like to limit that to maybe the lodging and the session itself, but I'll cover my own food and my own travel because those aren't fixed cost. I just want to present some fixed costs to the city and I'll cover the rest of it.
Fair enough.
All right. If somebody knows how to word that motion.
You said you wanted to cover the food and the lodging?
Lodging
Yeah.
and registration.
I'm sorry.
So that would just be
Yeah,
lodging
that'd
and
be the four
registration are
seats.
covered by the city.
Okay. I move to have Leslie Black and Mayor James Wansley attend East Texas Coalition Day.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Will be any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, hearing none, the motion carries. All right, that takes us to item 6. Discuss, consider, and act upon options to seek compliance from citizens on removing trash cards from the curb after solid waste and recycling collection. And just catch us all up. So this specific issue was first brought before the council by then citizen, Councilman Lowe, on October the 13th of 2019. Then a few more times before we discussed it as an agenda item during the October the 22nd, 2019 meeting. During this meeting, Public Services Gene Keenan was called in from the audience. Actually, he probably didn't know he was going to be called for his opinion as a previous member of the White House Council and longtime solid waste professional. So Gene's recommendation at the time was to start an awareness campaign, considering adding the ordinance if we were unable to receive results via awareness. In the meeting since October the 22nd of 2019, we as a council have not taken action on Mr. Keenan's recommendations. So here we are today. So I'll go ahead and open this item up for discussion.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, I think one of the first things we should do possibly is start a committee, maybe a little committee exploratory committee to see, where we need to be, and leave it open for the public. And maybe do some polling results and see if there's really interest in it, to be totally fair and everything. And I would be glad to undertake the challenge and, do all the work and whatever, be glad to.
All right. We have go ahead.
I was say on that topic, I appreciate that. I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great move in the right direction. My only caution would be for us to be very specific with our polling, and I'm sure Ms. Black will be helpful in that arena. We've learned the hard way that if you leave it open-ended, you can ask for, or you can receive feedback for which you can't do anything about. So my biggest concern would just be that whatever is presented is a viable option with our resources at hand. So that we can implement with the staff that we have, whatever it is that we're offering as an option.
Yeah. One thing good, we do have a code enforcement officer now. So it wouldn't just be an ordinance if it passed that we couldn't enforce. So that's a good plus. And I'll totally agree with you. I'll work with Leslie and we'll make sure we absolutely does it fair and square. And I just think that what this is about is not the, John and Bob or Sue or Jill, whatever, that goes on vacation once a year and leaves the carts out. It's for chronic, continual, over and over and over, blocking the sidewalks, which is a hazard for children, adults, senior citizens, rodent infestation, et cetera. And I did my homework and I checked the surrounding areas, and I'll be able to share that later on with y'all. Who's got it, who doesn't have it, do they like it, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll see, take it in little baby steps.
Sounds good.
I'll be glad, I'm sorry.
I'm really not in favor of anything that would enforce that. I think it's a waste of manpower to go through polling and everything, because that, what are you gonna do? Perhaps we could send out something in a water bill asking that people would abide by that and bring it in. I don't think we should waste time and money on enforcement or doing a poll or what else, will be involved in it.
I'll be glad to help with the awareness campaign. I think that can be, very effective if we can get a lot of different groups, getting the word out and asking people to pull it back, especially with the Keep White House Beautiful.
I feel like our citizens are under a lot of restrictions, extra restrictions right now because of all the virus and stuff, and I just don't think we need to add anything to them.
That's kind of where, I think under more ideal circumstances, yes, because I could see where we're already viewed as cities are money hungry. And so no matter how you try to do it, it's going to be viewed as this is a money grab from a revenue generating. And I'll throw out this, because we've had this come up before where you're right. I've driven down memory and there are trash cans out. I don't see it being citywide. In fact, there's actually a couple spots in the city where they've got a concrete pad for their trash cans beside the road. Yeah, and it's designed for them to sit there. So I don't know how we would address that aspect in an ordinance also. And then it goes back to, we had an individual that came and spoke to us and said, hey, I want you to create an ordinance because my neighbor keeps parking their vehicle in front of my house on the public road. And it was a hindrance to them, but how do you regulate everyone in the city for something that's just a few? And so I think that would be my concern. Is it an issue? Sure. I would say and I completely, to be honest with you, forgot about the campaign of trying to reach out first, seeing if that addresses the few locations. Because it goes into, I read the City of Tyler ordinance that you sent, and that's nice, but I would love to know how often they enforce that, because they have twice a week pickup. Well, we have regular garbage and recycle. So if my pickup is on Monday and recycle's on Wednesday, I have a cart in front of my house Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but by God, it's moved Friday and Saturday. Have we gained anything on that also? So, those are some things to think about too, that could be an issue, trying to get compliance and also an ordinance. And then I always think back to the few people that are like, okay, I'm gonna prove a point. I'm gonna move it 2 feet off the curb just to be in compliance. So I don't know how, I mean, because I'd be interested to read some of the articles. I know the one that was sent, it just says along the curb and there's really not a defined, okay, is that on the curb or a foot back from the curb? And so those are things to think about too. And then the ones that have some kind of barrier around. So that would be interesting to see how some of those cities address that.
Well, and there's also the issue that we have a third-party trash collector as opposed to, our own trash collection. So just the workload between the two entities on billing would be challenging as well. So I don't know how that works, but
I will say, I talked to our city attorney and he is in no way in favor of adding a criminal penalty violation to a utility bill. There's an absolute right to due process, and he has some very serious concerns that adding it to a utility bill and not sending it through the court system could get us into some hot water, so.
got it.
So if there were an ordinance and there were a fine, it would need to go through the court
Just to
system.
go through a normal ticketing process.
I think it probably only entails about just a guesstimate, maybe 2% of the population or one. I think the biggest issue is blocking sidewalks. I mean, it could cause a child or a senior citizen to have to dodge it and go maybe out in the street. And it's just a nuisance. Me personally, it takes about 2.9 minutes to move the trash can to the proper place.
If you're young, like yourself and in good shape, and
well,
it takes me about 12 minutes to walk to the end of the driveway.
Dick, you are too kind, sir.
So it
But-
does sound like we have a council person that's passionate about the issue. We have another council person that's willing to help on the messaging campaign as a way to try to make some movement on this. And that does seem like something we try that. We put a line in the sand to say, have we received movement on that? And then we reconsider it again if that campaign doesn't seem to be effective. Does that sound reasonable?
So just to be clear, we're not moving forward with any type of polling at this time, correct?
Nothing that is sponsored by the city. We have had polling in the past where, like the smoking ordinance, that committee
Right.
came together and did their own, but it wasn't from the city, so the city didn't catch the heat,
Okay.
the
Well,
white hot
That's a
heat.
I
safety
just want to
issue.
be, I just want to be clear on that because there is an expectation if there is polling from the city that there's going to be some action.
I don't think we
behind
should
that.
poll
So,
for this.
Yeah, and I think we should start with the awareness campaign and just see how successful
agree.
that is.
I agree.
And Keep White House Beautiful would be an awesome partner in
Right.
this to,
I agree.
for the circles, the different circles that come into that organization and the influence that they have. They've done some amazing things in the city, so.
Is it a problem putting something in a water bill?
No, sir, there is a cost, but that's the only.
No, if you just put something in there, ask you.
Oh, an
People-
insert, so not just in
Yeah.
the box, but an actual
Yeah.
insert, yeah.
Just asking them.
That'd be cheaper than trying to enforce, than having code enforcement drive around, for sure. So those are the types of recommendations that would be great off of this collaboration to see what comes out of it and what would be effective.
I think so.
All right, so that is this is the beginning of something new. Bring in the bins committee of two to come up with something.
I've heard
So
the card, but we don't want them on the curb, so we can't do that.
I'll even charge you with a mission. And in order to maintain a clean hometown feeling and keep our walking paths clear, explore options for encouraging citizens of White House to return their bins after collection. There we go. All right, we're looking forward to hearing back what you all come up with. So if you guys have something you'd like to present to council, otherwise I think it just move through Leslie, but if it does become something you'd like to present to council, just let Leslie or I know about 7 days before the next scheduled city council meeting, and we'll make sure to get it on that agenda. That seems to be that
14
time.
days.
14 days? Oh, wow.
Wow.
We can do it shorter, but
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it has to go out. to-
Remember my personality assessment. I like to
I
have ample
understand.
time.
I should have doubled it. I
Reflect
should have
on
doubled it.
myself.
I knew that. I've been through there. All right, any other discussion on this agenda item? All right, that moves us to item number 7. Consider future agenda items. At this time, are there any items to consider adding to the next scheduled meeting agenda?
Let me just offer this. We talked about signage on our municipal building. We don't have a sign. And it may be something to look at,
Okay,
you know. It's just a lot of municipalities have signs on their buildings, you know.
so just basic identification.
Yep, City of White House, municipal offices, police department.
You're wanting something, okay, because I remember what we had talked about, and so I drive around, and I was like, wait a minute, I remember them being on the doors. You're wanting something bigger
Yeah.
than on the doors.
That could be identified from the street,
Okay.
you know, say a new resident, because our city's growing. And, you know, I remember when I came here, I didn't know where anything was. I saw these buildings and I didn't know where they were. And I think for an affordable price, we could probably put a decent little sign up there, you know.
Yes. The problem you run in, I'll let you know now, is that might be something, at least getting an idea and then hitting it for budget.
Right.
Because cities are,
True.
they're, we're tight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's one thing in a long list of needs, and we've had some projects much smaller than signage on the building for this fiscal year. So I encourage you to consider it as an entire list of city needs so that you can understand what all we're facing. So staff will certainly work on getting some quotes and making sure it's in.
Yeah, you gotta
in
start, you have to start somewhere.
In our list for
Yeah.
the 2021,
Whether it's-
2022 fiscal year.
And just to give you an idea, there was some talk of fixing certain buildings, and then the rec required a large overhaul.
Yeah, HVAC, something, yeah.
Yeah, HVAC, security. So that's where, so there is a, you know, it might be not just signage, but a bigger picture of, okay, sign plus, you know, maintenance and so forth on the buildings that it falls under for this future budget cycle.
Sure.
But at least it's, you know, getting close to being the season for budget.
Be here before we know it.
Whether it's 6 months or a year, maybe
Yeah.
next year, but let's
Yeah.
just get it going, you know, we need a sign on the building. And the council chambers. So,
Okay, so does that need to be an agenda item, or is that just direction to staff? to-
Exploratory.
Yeah,
I think
keep
we
that,
can
to
get on
provide
some
that as a
quotes, make
capital.
sure it's on our budget list, and
Yeah.
we'll start looking at those things for next fiscal year.
and I thank you, council, thank you, Mayor.
Yes,
Yeah, we could readdress that as we start into the budget again.
yeah, we'll have those capital improvement projects are
Yeah.
just the thing. So we pay to keep the lights, and we have this much stuff. We pay to keep the lights on, and then we have this much stuff, and we have that capital improvements project. It's just a matter of
Sure.
prioritizing the things that come in there. It's hard to visualize the budget process until you've been through it for a city. But it's definitely a process. I actually like it. Maybe I'm weird, but it's a really hard problem. It's a really hard puzzle to solve.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge, and you try to get the most of it as you can. So that was a future agenda item. Any other agenda items you consider for future? Well, that takes us down to I. Will not be entering executive session, so will not be reconvening. So that brings us down to K, adjourn. Are there any other further items for discussion? Hearing none, the time is now 6:54 and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Congratulations again.
Yes, very
Thank
much
you all
so.
for having me.